Welcome to the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the defining moments that shape extraordinary people into who they've become. Our today's guest is Robert Boa, storyteller, outdoor man, and self-published author of the Campfire Tale from the Uncle Rob and our Cry type horrors novels, our Half Dog with travel. What made Robert who he is today wasn't a single dramatic event, but a lifetime built on hard work and a deep love for the outdoor. Across 43 years, with Odot and countless hours fishing and hunting, that combination of discipline and wonder shaped both the man and the storyteller, one who found in the quiet moments of the wild more strange and unforgettable material that fiction could invent in its own. It's really a pleasure and honor to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me on. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So, Robert, before the writing career, who were you as a young man, discovering your love for the outdoor, and what first drew you to hunting and fishing?
Well, I grew up in northwest Oklahoma, a small town, 1,500 people. When I was very young, my dad worked construction, and we traveled all over the United States for his work. We lived in Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, New Orleans, Alabama, Florida. But when I got to be school age, my mother put her foot down. She wanted me to have a stable environment and go to school, and she picked her hometown. So that's where we came back to. We had family there, and my dad loved to hunt and fish, and so did his dad, my grandpa Bowers. And he just kind of passed that on to me. And I had a cousin named Rusty who loved to hunt and fish, and he went with dad all the time, and I was lucky enough to go with them. So it's, I guess, being in the outdoors, loving hunting and fishing I guess it's in my DNA. It was bred into me. And when I was a young man in my 20s, I was working for ODOT, Oklahoma Department of Transportation, and I was lucky enough to meet some older gentlemen who were just fantastic fishermen. They were way more experienced than I was, way better fishermen than I'll probably ever be. And I was lucky enough that they asked me to go fishing with them. And I, of course, you bet I want to go. And when I went with
Yeah.
those guys, I learned everything that I could learn from them. And they made me a much better fisherman, taught me more patience and just more techniques and different lures and different baits. And a lot of those guys are in my stories. And had a lot of weird things and funny things happen to me over the years, and was at a local lake a few years ago, and it was in October and the weather was not very good. It was cold and wet and windy, and so we were all sitting around the campfire, and I was telling stories about things that had happened to me and things that I had seen. And my nieces and nephews just kept telling me, wow, Uncle Rob, you've got some great stories. You need to write
Yeah.
these down. You need to write a book. And like I say, the weather was not very good, so we couldn't do what we wanted to do. You know, we couldn't go out on the lake in the boat. We couldn't really do what we wanted to do. So we were just kind of sitting around and reminiscing. And of course, I was telling stories. So that night I went into the camper and got my tablet out and started writing stories down. And by the time we went home, I think I had 8 stories finished. And when we got home from the lake, I wrote, I think 4 more and had some people read them. And I got really positive, good feedback on my stories. So I thought, okay, so I kind of polished them up and decided I would put them in a book and publish it on Amazon. And that was really the start of it. That's what happened. The book went live on Amazon and got really good feedback, and that led to one thing led to another, and then pretty soon I had 3 more volumes of Campfire Tales from Uncle Rob. So, and it's just been wild. It's been kind of crazy. And then after that, why, I was kind of out of true stories that I thought were book worthy, interesting enough, funny enough, or creepy enough to put into another volume of true stories. So, but I had the writing bug. I wanted to write more. So that's what I did. I started writing fiction, and I've always been kind of drawn to cryptids just because of the mystery and the unknown, and
Yeah.
also from some weird experiences that I've had out in the outdoors. So, and I liked reading cryptid horror fiction, thriller type. So that's what I started in. I've put out 3 of those now. So, and I'm working on a 4th. So that's kind of my background on what's going on now with me.
That was really lovely. From hunting, and then to writing your first novel, then the other three. It's really, really amazing. Very lovely to hear. Thank you for sharing. And also, what did 43 years of hard work with Odo actually teach you about discipline, persistence, and that carry into every other part of your life?
Well, I I went off to college, graduated high school when I was 17, went off to college, University of Oklahoma, and I was one of those kids I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had some things in my mind, but when I got there and started taking classes, I'm like, yeah, I don't think this is for me.
Yeah,
So then I switched around, and had no major, and I think I was just tired of going to school. And so I went home for the summer and decided I would get a job and I would work, and maybe I'd work for 6 months, and take a semester off and then go back to school. Well, I had worked the summer for ODOT, and so I went to them, and I'll be danged, they hired me, and I got hired onto the traffic crew. Excuse me. That was
yeah,
partially the traffic crew back then was the sign crew and the center line crew. So, and then later on, the bridge crew was part of traffic too. So I worked on all three of those crews, and I started at the bottom and worked my way up and made it to the supervisor position. So, and looking back, I mean, and I got married and bought a house and bought a vehicle, and next thing I knew, I wasn't going back to school. I had responsibilities. I had a
yeah,
job
yeah,
and a wife and bills to pay. So, but 12 years in, I felt like I needed a change. I was not really happy with the crew I was on, where I was at. I loved the work. I
yeah,
just felt like I wanted to change. And the county south of where I was, Woodward County, the county supervisor down there, I'd heard he was retiring. So I talked to the big boss up there at the headquarters and told him that I was interested in that job whenever the man down there left. And he looked at me and said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I want to try something different. I don't want to leave the department. I'd like to stay at the department, but I want another challenge. I want to do something different." And he said, "Well, I'll consider you." And I said, "Well, that's all I'm asking. I just wanted to let you know so you're not blindsided surprised that I'm wanting to do something different." And so a couple of weeks later, I'm sitting in my office, and all the crews around there, about to give out work assignments. And the boss between me and the big boss came down and stuck his head in my office and said, "Hey, Rob, come down here to Mr. Ward's office." Mr. Ward was the big boss.
yeah,
I said, "Okay." He was the division engineer. So he ducks back out and goes down the hall, and I'm looking at all the guys on my crew and in there, and I'm thinking, "All right, what'd you guys do now?" I'm thinking they'd done something, and so they said, "Oh, we didn't do nothing." Well, yeah, that's what you always say. So, but anyway, I went down the hall, and all the bosses are in the big man's office, and I went in. They said, "Close the door," and I thought, "Oh, boy, here we go." That's usually not good when you get called into the big office and they tell you to
yeah,
close the door.
yeah,
So they said, "Have a seat." So I sat down, and they said, Mr. Ward asked me, he said, "Are you still interested in that job down there?" I said, "Yes, I am." And they said, "Well, good. You can start today." I'm like, "Today? He's that guy down there that he's not even gone yet." And they said, "Well, that's okay. You can go down there and just tell him you're going to be the new boss, and you ride around with him, learn what you can learn from him before he leaves, because he's still got a couple of months to go before he retires." Well, I wasn't very comfortable with that, as you can imagine.
yeah,
So, but one of the boss just over me, well, he said, "That's not the way to do that. I'll go down there with him, and we'll tell them what's going on, and that Rob's going to go down there and ride with their current boss until he decides to leave, and then he can take over." So we went down there and talked to him, and of course he was like, "I'm leaving. I don't care what you do when I'm gone." And I knew him and he knew me, so it wasn't any problem at all. So that was in like 95 or 96. So 30 years later, 31 years later, I decided I would retire. And
yeah,
I stayed in that job where I was the county maintenance superintendent for 30, 31 years and really enjoyed it. When I took that job, I wasn't real good at talking to the public. I was pretty good at talking to the crew, to my people. And of course, this was all new people that I had never really worked with before. I knew all of them,
yeah,
but I didn't really know their job, and I was green as a gourd. I thought I knew what was going on, but I really didn't. And luckily, the man that I was going to replace was very gracious and helped me a lot before he left. And like I say, I had to work at talking to the public. It was a public service job.
Yeah.
Our job was maintenance on the highways and the right of ways. So, and people would come in sometimes madder than a wet cat over something, and I didn't really know how to handle that. But after several years, I think I got pretty good at it. Most of
Yeah.
the time when I talked to people on the phone or in person, by the time they left, they were reassured that I had listened to and noted and documented their complaint and was going to go look at it. And if it was something that was actually our responsibility, we were
Yeah.
going to take care of it. So, and it was a whole new learning curve, really.
Yeah.
But it turned out for the best. I mean, I hired and fired a lot of people, but I made a lot of friends. I met a lot of people and found lots of fishing holes. So,
Yeah.
so it was all good in the long run.
Yeah. This is really lovely and a whole lot to really learn from, owing to the fact that, yeah, after being working in a particular roles, you decide to say, I need new experience. You went out for it, you got it, and you're able to maintain it all day long before you get to retire. It's really amazing. So how did your decade of physical demanding work shape the patience you now bring to storytelling and observation in the wild?
Well, I guess I've just always kind of been a storyteller. I enjoyed being in the outdoors and a lot of times I was by myself. But it's always funner when you have somebody to go with you, whether it's a buddy or an uncle or a cousin or a nephew or niece. It's always funner when you share the experience. And that's really what it's all about, I think, is making memories. Some of the earliest, fondest memories I have of my childhood was out hunting and fishing with my dad and my grandpa. And I've tried to pass that along to my nieces and nephews, and I enjoyed when they were small. I enjoyed taking them out. Now I've got great nieces and nephews to take fishing. So I mean, it's great, and I try to pass on some of that experience and enjoyment to the next generation and the next generation after that, and hopefully whenever they get, hopefully they do the same thing. They take their kids and their nieces and nephews out like I did them and grandpa and dad did me,
Yeah.
and hopefully pass all that on because the outdoors I think it's just great. I mean, everybody needs a break sometimes. You need to get
Yeah.
out of the
Yeah.
office or get away from work. And what better place than to go out to a local lake or down to the river or out at a farm pond and just kind of chill and relax and kind of reset, and without actually taking a vacation, you're taking a little mini vacation. You're
Yeah.
kind of getting away from it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Outdoor and physical work, and the fact that, yes, just being in the office every now and then does not speak much. Sometimes having to take outdoor, yeah, having to go outdoor for fishing and other stuff just make life more interesting. And it's really amazing. Being that, I think I was telling my friend the other day that I can't stay 2 3 days in. They are doing a remote job without going out and doing a particular job. Yeah, in between, I have more like a painting job here. And so I only do podcasting twice in the week. And those 2 days I do podcasting, it's usually very tiring. I'm like, I just want to go out and feel the nature. And
We
just
call it
hearing you.
we we call it cabin fever.
Yeah.
You've been indoors so long, you just got to get out in the fresh air.
Yeah. Like sometimes I'll just be like, even if I'm not doing anything, let me just go out and walk miles and come back home. Let me just walk
Yeah,
few
go out and
miles.
take a walk. Take a walk out in the fresh air and the wind and the air and the grass and the
Yeah.
animals, and that's one thing about like when you're
Yeah. Absolutely.
at a lake or a river or a creek
Yeah.
or a farm pond, there's always something going on around you if you're paying attention.
Yeah.
There's animals, there's other people, there's boats, there's birds and fish, and it's just a great place to reset, just to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city or the office and work and I just think it's very important. I know it helped me a lot through the years. I hated personnel problems, being a
Yeah.
supervisor. I hated that. So, and that usually when I had some kind of stress at work, that's what it was. It was some kind of personnel problems with somebody on the crew, either between them and me or between, crew members, and I hated dealing with that stuff.
Yeah.
But with practice and schooling, and I got better at it, but I still didn't like it. So, every chance that I could get, I would go get out in nature and go fishing or hunting or shoot, just go out and take a drive or a walk, or even playing golf helps. Just
Yeah.
get out away from
Yeah.
everything, focus your mind on something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. And also, you have encountered ship tide, unexplained sighting, and strange moment in the nature. Did your years of hard outdoor work make you more attuned to noticing those unexplained details rather than just rushing past them?
That's a good question. I haven't really thought about that. Part of my job as I drove around my area was to look for problems, things that needed to be worked on,
Yeah.
needed to be fixed. So I became, whether it was a pothole or a culvert that needed cleaned or a sign that needed fixed. So, maybe that is one of the reasons why I paid more attention to details and things when I was outdoors. It could be. I never have thought of that before. That's a distinct possibility that had something to do with it. And sometimes you're just in the area and stuff just happens and you have to focus on it because it just either mystifies you or scares the crap out of you, or it's just so funny you hurt from laughing so much. But other times maybe I think that's a distinct possibility. That might be part of the reason why I have noticed some of the things that I have written about. That's a good point. I never thought of that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Once again, pleasure having you here. And also, beginning to write seriously a few years before retirement, after 4 decades of hard physical workout, what did that transition actually require of you?
Wow. Well, like anything else, it was something
Yeah.
new, so I had some anxiety about it, whether I could really do it.
Yeah.
My nieces and nephews really encouraged me. They, said I had great stories, and that helped a lot. But you never really know until you try. So,
Yeah.
and sometimes I'm afraid to try new things, like anybody else, afraid of the unknown. But that was one thing that I thought about for quite a while, and I said, why not give it a shot? And so I guess, the main thing is, like, in the end, I wasn't afraid to try it, and it's just been amazing, crazy, that I've had feedback and reviews and people that's told me, that seen me, that read something I wrote, that they enjoyed it, and that just means everything. So, but it was kind of you really just have to make the time,
Yeah.
because if you just kind of get into the same routine, you just don't seem to find the time to fit something else in. And you really just got to have the mindset, okay, I'm going to do this. And whenever it feels right, your mind gets right, you say, okay, I'm, I'm going in this room, I'm going to shut the door and I'm going to do this. I'm going to work on it. And I did the same thing at work sometimes when I was trying to write a report, or maybe I was trying to do an employee evaluation and trying to do a good job at it and be fair. And so I guess that aspect of the work kind of prepared me for that. I'm not a multitasker. I can't do two or three things at once.
Yeah.
I need to focus on one thing
Right.
and devote my undivided attention at it. Like when I'm writing, I can't have the TV playing in the background because I keep
Yeah.
turning around going, I can't multitask. I can listen to music, but then I find that I'm listening to a particular song and I'm not writing. So
Yeah.
it kind of a little distracting now and again. But yeah, I'm not a multitasker. I have to focus on the task at hand and devote my full attention to that to get something done. So
Yeah.
I don't like to be distracted when I'm trying to be focused.
Yeah. Amazing.
I
Amazing.
admire and wonder at how people can multitask and do two or three things at once. Because if I try that, I've got it all screwed up.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So, looking back at your younger self, the man building a career and a life around hard work and the outdoor, if you were to talk to your younger self, what would you want him to know about the storyteller, the author he eventually becomes?
Oh, let's see. I don't really. I've got some other author friends that I've met because I'm now an author, and I talk to
Yeah.
them some, and we all do things differently.
Yeah.
Before I write a story, I do an outline of it. Now I don't stick to the outline. I drift off and
Yeah.
then have to, look at the outline and get back on track. But in my mind, my story as I'm writing it is playing like a movie in my head.
Ooh.
So I'm trying to visualize what the reader is going to be visualizing as they're reading it. So that's kind of the direction and how I do it. I don't know. That's just what works for me. I don't really know. Other authors, I'm sure, do things completely different. But
Yeah.
for me, that's just how I start with an outline and a kind of a story that I'm wanting to do. And I go through the outline chapter by chapter. And then sometimes I'm going along and I'm writing and I'm like, man, how many words is this chapter? This chapter is like 4,000 words long. And let me see if I can figure out a place in the middle of it where I can stop it and start another chapter. So, I do things like that. Or the other day I was writing and I was kind of stuck. I knew where I was wanting to go with the story, but I couldn't figure out how I was going to get there. And so I was driving around and listening to a podcast. And this podcast gave me the idea, like, oh, that's not a bad idea. I can kind of use just a tiny little bit of that idea,
Yeah.
but I'm going to go this direction with it. I'm not going where that went, that was, but that gave me the idea to go on. So you get inspiration. I do get inspiration from everywhere,
Yeah.
but I think, but writer's block is a thing. When I was writing the Campfire Tales from Uncle Rob, I didn't have writer's block because those were true stories. They really happened to me. So I didn't have to make anything up. When I started the fiction, then I was, starting totally from scratch, from an idea that I had. So that really had to rely on my imagination and like I say, writer's block when I got to writing fiction, it's a real thing. I get stuck. But so far I found a way to get around it and go on and move on down the road with it. But I can understand how frustrating it can be when you're wanting to finish something so bad, but you're just stuck and you can't get, it's happened to me. Luckily, it doesn't last long. And
Yeah.
another great way is like go outdoors, go fishing, go take a walk, go and get your mind on something else. And then all of a sudden, it'll just come to you in a flash. Aha! Why didn't I think of that earlier? It
Yeah.
was right there. Yeah. But I think
Yeah.
sometimes you concentrate on it. I do. I concentrate on it too hard. And the more I do that, the worse it gets. So it's kind of you just shut it off and go do something else, think about something else, and then when you go back, and all of a sudden you'll get an inspiration, a thought. Maybe it's a smell or a song or something that you see, outdoors. You're like, aha,
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing.
eureka, or what,
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So, what is one funny and unexpected stories from your years in working at ODOT that still make you laugh anytime you think about it?
From ODOT. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
there's so many. I remember one time we had a snowstorm, and it was a big snowstorm. It was like we hadn't had one of these since in 25 years, probably. This was like 2011, 2012, and we hadn't had one like this since Thanksgiving of 92. And we had like 30 inches of snow in northwest Oklahoma. It was terrible. And it was right at the end of March. So it was really wet snow. It was really, really wet. And so it wasn't froze down to the road or anything. We could move it. We just didn't have enough people and equipment to get it done. And so they pulled in people from all around the state of Oklahoma to come help us. And they were all staging at my maintenance yard. And my boss told me, he said, just whenever they come in there, just start sending them out. Send them, send some out in the panhandle and send some over here and send some over there. I'm like, okay. And he said, they keep a crew or two around there to help you. Well, of course, I was going to do that. So it was like the second day after they'd all come and had been, and I'd sent them out all over the state to help. And I'm sure they were getting directions from other people after I sent them. But
Yeah.
so this guy called me and he was from southeast Oklahoma, way down in the southeast corner of the state. And they don't get snow like this, like up down there. And we
Yeah.
don't very often, thank goodness. And it was their big boss themselves, the division engineer. He called me on the phone and he was coming out with the crew because he hadn't seen snow like that either. He wanted to see it. He's coming with his crew. And they're
Yeah.
driving like 500 miles just to get to us.
Ooh.
So he calls me and he says, where's all this snow at? And I'm like, well, where are you at? Well, I don't know where we're at. I said, well, you just keep coming. You get up around ceiling down there, you'll run into it. And so about an hour later, he calls me. He goes, we're going to turn around and go back. We've only got like 4 or 6 inches. There's nothing like what we were told. And I said, where are you at? And he finally told me, and I said, he told me he'd seen a sign. Now, I knew right where he was. I said, you're about 9 miles from ceiling. Once you get to ceiling, you're going to run into it. And he's like, well, we better, or we're just going to turn around and go back. He said, we're doing some good, but I mean, hell, you guys can take care of this. So, he thought that we had really squawked about something that wasn't really a big deal, I guess. And I said, just keep coming. You'll run into it. So about 30 minutes later, I guess, phone rings again and it's him again. So I, hello. And he's like, never mind. We found it. He's like,
Yeah.
holy crap. And I was like, yeah, see, I told you. And he's like, well, where do you want us to go? And I said, well, when you go through ceiling and turn on Highway 281 and go up, start on 281, and you'll go through Griever Canyon and you'll go up into Woods County. When you get up there around Winoka, call this guy and he'll send you where he wants you. But yeah, he was not happy, and then all of a sudden it went from like 4 to 6 inches to about 30 inches of snow, and he's like, holy crap. Made a believer out of him. And we were at a conference like the next year, and he came up to me and apologized to me for being that way. I said, hey, I'd have probably been the same way if they'd have sent me down there to help you, and I'd have got down there and was like, what are we coming down all the way down here for? This is nothing. But yeah, he's like, holy crap, man, you guys got dumped on. I'm like, yeah, it was quite the storm. Not at all what we were used to. We get
Yeah.
more snow than any other part of the state
Oh,
normally,
wow.
but that was above and beyond. I mean, we got more snow in that one storm than we'd had total in like 3 or 4 years previous. So it was a blizzard for sure.
Yeah. This is really amazing. And thank you so much for sharing. So lastly, what advice will you give to someone who thinks it is too late in life to start writing or pursuing a creative passion?
Well, don't ever think it's too late. And don't ever let anybody tell you you're too old to do something or it's too late in
Yeah.
too late in your life. Don't fall for that. You never know until you try. Don't be afraid to take a risk. Hold your nose and jump in. Maybe the water's not as deep as you think it is.
Yeah.
People are very resourceful if they really put their minds to something. And
Yeah.
if you really challenge somebody, I found that at work. I have a young man or a young lady working for me, and they get bored. The young
Yeah.
people these days have really short attention spans. You got to keep challenging them, giving them new things to do, new challenges, and that just perks them up and keeps their interest. And it's the same way when you're trying to do something new. And don't be afraid to try. Just because you think you can't do it, or don't let anybody tell you can't do it. They don't know. They just think they know. You're the only one that can really find out. Give it a shot.
Yeah.
And another thing is, if you're going to write, maybe it's just natural to try to copy somebody else's style.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to do that, because your style is going to come through, I think, and you'll be doing your own thing. And also, I think it's important to get a circle of readers that will help you, that can come. You can, as you write things, send it to them and get their feedback. Encourage them to give you an honest opinion. Like, what do you think of this? And don't be afraid to tell me if I need, if this doesn't make sense, or that's,
Yeah.
because most independent authors, we can't afford professional editors. So we got to rely on our family and
Yeah.
friends to
Family and friends. Yeah.
read our stuff. And it's very important, I think, because I can't tell you how many times I've sent things to people that I send things to, and they're like, well, there's a typo here, or this guy was wearing boots at the start of the story, and then the next chapter started and he was wearing moccasins. And I'm like, what? And I go back and read, and I'm like, you're right. How did I miss that?
Yeah.
Just stuff like that they can help you catch, so you can, fix some of that. And you're not going to catch it all. Trust me.
Yeah. So true. So true.
But
Yeah.
you can get a lot of it and make more sense. But the main thing is, don't be afraid to try. If it's your dream to write a story, write a book, write an article, give it a shot, submit it. Who knows? Somebody
Yeah.
might like it. They might publish it.
Yeah.
You never know until you try.
You never know until you try. Give it a shot and have friends around that will be able to kind of see through those lines of those writing. And yeah, this is really amazing. And thank you so much for sharing your heart with us. on the making of me. So from our audience who would love to kind of get your book, want to reach out and reach out to you and connect with you, how can they do this and where's the best platform?
All of my books are on Amazon. You can search for my name, Robert O. Bowers, or you can search for the book titles, Campfire Tales from Uncle Rob, volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. And my fiction books are Red Eyes at Black Mesa, Have Dog Will Travel, and I just put out just a month ago or so a prequel to Have Dog Will Travel that I call Have Dog Will Travel Valley of the Champy. And for those who are wondering, a Champy is the Choctaw name for Bigfoot. So it's really the Valley of Bigfoot, but Champy is the Choctaw Indian name, tribal name for one of the Bigfoot creatures in their folklore. And it's a prequel. It takes place back in the 1830s, 1840s. So it's kind of a Western horror cryptid thriller, and it was a lot of fun to write. I had to do a lot of research, and it was a lot of fun. And all my books are on Amazon. They're available in paperback, Kindle, Kindle Unlimited, and I think all but the newest one is available in Audible, an audio version of it. So
yeah, thank you so much, Robert, and thank you for sharing your heart with us on the making of me. And from our audience who would love to reach out, check the show notes. You see the link to relate to that and being able to explore and get the book. Once again, Robert, thank you for sharing, showing us that lifetime is built on hard work and genuine love of the outdoor can become the deepest where stories a person could ever draw from decades spent walking the land and waiting patiently for the water. To an author capturing all those strange, funny, unforgettable moments in print. You are proof that paying attention to a well-lived life is often the best story materials there is. It's really a pleasure and honor having you on the show.
thank you for having me on. It's been fun. I've had a great time. Thank you very much.